I'm the host, Lee Smith. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And we have another great show. This is a very special show because we are going to be speaking with a congressman, a U.S. legislator, a U.S. Army veteran, and also a first-time novelist who has his debut novel out, The Stinger Proxy. And with us here to talk about it is the author again, Congressman, Mr. Rick Crawford. Thank you so much, Congressman, for being here with us today. And congratulations on your book, The Stinger Proxy. It's not every congressman that writes a novel. It's not writing a novel is a hard thing and a difficult thing. And while you're serving your constituents at the same time. So congratulations and God bless you. That's really great.
Well, so you're right. It's a little bit of a challenge, but here's how this kind of all started. My wife's been telling me for, I don't know, 28 years I should write this book and tell this story. And if you've ever seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War, then you know that that's basically that's the backdrop of this book. So it's based on actual experience. And what motivated me was, we had been in the majority for a period of several years, and we lost the majority in 2018. And I thought, what am I going to do with my time? Things were, we weren't in the driver's seat in the House anymore, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started writing the book, and believe it or not, most of it was written in an airplane because I fly back and forth on the weekends and whatever travel I was doing associated with my committee assignments and so on. I would pick up my iPad and I would just use that time in the airplane as productively as I could. So it took me a couple of years to get it done, but most of it was on an airplane.
Wrote in an airplane. That must come from your experience as a congressman, because most writers would find it very hard, and all these writers are very sensitive, creative figures. So if they don't have the right cup of coffee, if they don't have the right plate of cheese arranged around them, it's very hard for them to write a novel. But you're going back and forth on an airplane, writing in an iPad. All right, that's pretty impressive. Was that just because you did so much work already as a congressman on the airplane?
It's kind of used to it. You get sort of in the rhythm of travel and trying to. I don't like to read on an airplane because I tend to fall asleep, and I don't want to fall asleep on an airplane because I snore and I don't want to disrupt the other passengers. So I find other things to do, and I didn't want to just sit there and watch movies or whatever. So I thought this was really a great opportunity to use this time productively. And interestingly, as I started getting into this book, I was tapping away on the keyboard, and there was a lady sitting next to me in the seat next to me, and I saw her getting closer and closer to me, leaning over my shoulder. And I kind of looked over at her, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She says, "But I have to ask you, are you writing a book?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I am." And she goes, "Well, I have to read that when it comes out." I said, "Well, I don't know if it's going to come out or not. I still haven't found a publisher or anything." But she said, "What's the name of it? Because I'm going to be looking for it." Because she was watching it, reading it as I was typing it out. And I thought, well, I must be onto something because I got a total stranger here that's really taking an interest.
Wow, yeah. So she probably wants to know how it turns out. If she's watching us today, now she knows that the Stinger Proxy is available for sale at independent bookstores near you, as well as Amazon. Okay, I know that I believe that one of your colleagues as well, I think he's on the House Intelligence Committee still too, and that's one of your committee assignments. Isn't that one of your committee assignments still? Hasn't Congressman Stewart written a few novels too?
Oh my goodness, yes. He's a prolific writer. In fact, he was a guy that really motivated me to get it going. And he wrote a nice endorsement of the book, and he was kind of coaching me along as I went. And I have to tell you a little story about this, because a lot of what this started was I pitched the idea to him to write because he's a prolific writer. And so we were settling in for a lengthy vote series, and he said, "Well, tell me about this story." And we were probably in the chamber for, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour, and I'm telling him about it, and we hit that last vote and get ready to walk out of I said, "So what do you think? You interested in writing it?" He goes, "Nope, you're going to write it." I said, I'm not going to write it." He said, "Yeah, you're going to write it." He said, "Go home, write 50 pages and send it to me, and I will be brutally honest with you." I said, "Okay." So I went home, and over the course of, the next few days, I finally turned out 50 pages, and I thought I'll never get this thing done because 50 pages, like, man, I've never written that much at one time. I sent him the 50 pages, and I saw him in, another week or whatever, and he says, "Now I told you I was going to be brutally honest." And I said, "Yeah, okay, here it comes." And he goes, "You got to keep doing it. Send
Wow.
me another 50 pages. I love it." So he was encouraging me and coaching me along the way. So he was very much
Huh.
a mentor of sorts, and continues to be. He's just a great guy and a good friend.
Are there any other House members who have written a novel who are serving now?
If there are, I'm not aware of it, but I mean, there's a whole lot of storytellers, but I don't know that they've ever
Well,
put pen to paper
that so
and
that's great. So it's basically
written.
the House Republican side of House Intelligence Committee. That is the literary heart right there, the literary heart of Washington D.C. That's
Yeah,
great. Well, congratulations again. But now, if you can tell us what
yeah.
was in those
Thank
50
you.
pages
Appreciate it.
that you sent Congressman Stewart, and what is the story? What is the story of the Stinger Proxy?
So, as the name implies, I mean, it's involving the Stinger missiles. And if you think back to what I said earlier about this being sort of, a subplot of Charlie Wilson's war. Um,
Hmm.
so I didn't know who Charlie Wilson was in 1988. All I know is I'm a 22-year-old sergeant, and I get a call at, 2:45 in the morning or whatever it is, that, "Hey, get down here to the unit." I get to the unit, and they tell me, "You're going to Pakistan." I have no idea what's going on. So I started kind of trying to piece things together, and what happened I was literally on the ground within 26 hours. What happened was a shipment of one of the shipments of munitions that Charlie Wilson's war talks about moving munitions into Afghanistan, and Pakistan was integral to that. In fact, they insisted on being the um, sort of the middlemen, if you will, in this operation. And so all these munitions were being sent through Pakistan. Well, this particular shipment, as it turns out, was the largest and most expensive shipment to date at that point in time. It was 1988, and you think about, this had been going on for, probably about 8 years that we were involved,
Hmm.
and it was ramping up over a period of years. Well, April of 1988, they sent the biggest shipment, and in that shipment, as the movie suggests, the Stinger missile
Hmm.
was a turning point for the Mujahideen, the Afghan freedom fighters, against the Soviets. And so there was ostensibly a large number of Stinger missiles in that shipment. And so for some reason, people still
Hmm.
have different feelings about how this happened, but essentially the entire shipment blew up. So
Wow.
different accounts will tell you that there were as many as 3,000 casualties. It was right in the middle of a major metropolitan area, that is Islamabad and Rawalpindi. Islamabad is the sort of the planned capital city of Pakistan, and it's right next door to Rawalpindi, and collectively that's probably around 3 to 4 million people. And so it's a pretty major metropolitan area, and they had this garrison there of this military installations, home of the Pak Army, called Camp Ojiri. And that's where these munitions were stored prior to their movement into Afghanistan. Now, there's some
Hmm.
questions about why they would have moved this big of a shipment through this installation when there had been other installations used, and other sort of portals into Afghanistan. And, there's a lot of conspiracy theories woven over the years about that. But at any rate, it caused a lot of casualties. So this novel is fact based, it's based on actual events. Um, as writers do, I took some creative liberty to make the story a little more interesting, but I didn't have to be too creative about it because the story in and of itself is very interesting. One of the things I did do was
Hmm.
I changed all of the team members' names. Um, that look, not everybody is presented in
Uh,
the most favorable light, um, but they are all good people on my team, um, and but I didn't want to, malign anybody. And of course, anybody that was part of this 8-man team, they're going to know exactly who I'm talking about, and they may take issue with the fact that I changed their names. I don't know.
hmm.
But I changed those names even though they were real people. And the only real names that I kept were some historic figures that are important to note, one of which was the ambassador to Pakistan, the U.S. ambassador to Pakistan, a guy named Arnold Rafel, who was serving as the ambassador. Our U.S. defense representative in Pakistan, General Herbert Wassam, used his real name. Obviously, President Zia. And then one of the Pakistani generals was a guy named Javed Nasir, who was, they called him Whitebeard. And he had a long white beard, much longer than mine and much whiter than mine. And he was the only officer that was given that dispensation. And he was a strict, very strict adherent to Islam, very conservative, and was later found guilty in The Hague of gun running in the Balkans after this happened. They tried to extradite him, and Pakistan wouldn't give him up. I didn't know at the time that he was the deputy director of ISI, which is their version of the CIA. And yet he was the one that was orchestrating the cleanup operation. And so it's rare that a general, a high-ranking individual, would be actually managing an operation of this nature. Usually that general would look at this operation and go, yeah, well, this looks really bad. Let me call this colonel. And then that colonel would say, yeah, this is terrible. Let me call the major. And the major would then oversee the operation. Yet he was hands-on from day one and almost ever present whenever we were out there. Not always, but he did maintain a very high profile in this, which was unusual. And we thought so, but we didn't know that at the time that he was the deputy director of ISI, which is Inter-Services Intelligence, the CIA counterpart.
Well, no, this is great. I was going to say, I feel
that's
bad because I don't want you to give away the book. I don't want you to give away too much of the plot. On the other hand, you're saying it's based on a real story. So I want to know a little bit more where it goes. But why don't you say, like, what was your job, or what is the job of the main protagonist in the book? Then I want to come back later and talk about your actual real service, and what you did in Pakistan. But what is the job of the protagonist? He is tasked to find out who was responsible for this explosion, or what are they doing?
I was part of an 8-man team, and I don't write this in the first person. You'll know exactly who my character is when you read the book. But I was a young 22-year-old sergeant, pretty green but well trained, and I'm part of this team, and we're there to clean up what amounts. So there's unexploded ordnance everywhere. And this was a very chaotic scene. And we arrived there, like I said, we were on the ground within about 26 hours, and the fires were still going on this installation. In fact, there were fire hoses crisscrossing the installation. You could still hear intermittent explosions. It was very, very much a hot zone by the time we arrived there. And so we were met. So there's myself and 7 of my teammates, led by a Captain Army EOD team, explosive ordnance disposal team, led by a captain and a sergeant major, both of whom were Vietnam veterans and had both experienced a similar event in Vietnam. So they were the team leaders. Well, we had a handler in country that worked out of the embassy. Now, it's probably anybody's, we speculate whether he was actually a CIA guy or whether he was an Army guy. But the fact is, I think he was Special Forces, Army, and was working on detail or in concert with the CIA. But he was the guy that sort of set us on task. He was the guy that managed our team. He was the guy that had been integral for some time in helping to transit these weapons to Afghanistan. So he really knew what he was talking about and knew he was a very experienced individual. So I would say he was probably the protagonist, and he was, I don't want to say he was obsessed, but he was very consumed with determining where these stingers ended up and who actually may have done the sabotage.
Wow.
If in fact
So
it was sabotage,
we have to cut away. If for people who are watching on YouTube, come back, watch us on Epoch TV exclusively, because I'm going to ask. Congressman Crawford just left us on an excellent cliff to hang on. So we've got a cliffhanger. He said, I believe it was sabotage. So when we come back from our brief break, he may have to ruin a little bit of a plot point here, but we've got to know, we've got to get to the bottom of that. Who was responsible for the sabotage? We're going to talk more about the Stinger Proxy debut novel from Congressman Rick Crawford. A great conversation we're having with the Congressman. Please make sure you join us. Less than a minute. We'll be back. See you soon. Anything that Bill Gates wants to do, whether it has to do with vaccines, whether it has to do with food, whether it has to do with mosquitoes, everyone's listening. He pays his money, and it seems like he gets his way with stuff.
His whole persona and his whole the brand is that he's like saving the planet. That's not true. He admitted that the planet's going to be fine, quote, going to be fine. This is after decades of hyping up climate change and global warming as like a catastrophic event heading right down on us within a decade.
They are determined to control every aspect of American life. Why is that? Why are our oligarchs control-oligarchs?
And the very simple surface level explanation would be money. Control and power and influence leads to money. It's not a problem making money, but it's what you do with that money. Really, what we sort of uncovered here is not everything in this is about money. Some of it is a desire to control people's lives, and we've done some research on that.